All right, guys. Haz Mat and MCIs.
You had it Wednesday. You have until Friday at 8 o'clock.
All right, guys. Chapter 39. Haz Mat and MCI. This topic this chapter covers two things, and both of them are pretty important. It's not things that we see all the time, but it's stuff that we need to understand. This is a little cartoon, typical cartoon of a dumb fireman. You know, he goes in there and there's this green fluid coming out of a thing, and he sticks his finger in it, and then he tastes it, and he says, "It doesn't taste too bad to me," you know. So that's complacency, okay? And it's a toxin. So just be careful of what you're doing, where you're doing, and what it is. The DOT, the Department of Transportation, is your main source on anything to do with hazardous materials. What is a hazardous material? Any substance or material in a form of which poses an unreasonable risk to health, safety, property when transported in commerce. And so, why we say the DOT? Because most of the time, lots of the time, we're dealing with things that are being transported on the rails, in the air, on the ships, or in the trucks going up and down the interstate. Now, you can have hazmat incidents at schools, at Auburn University, and in labs, and the lab at Southern Union. You can have you can have incidents at businesses, at Kia Motors or whatever. They have hazardous materials there, but usually at industry they have a team there, and they're aware when they call you in. They're already aware. As an EMT, you have to become and be able to recognize that there is a hazmat incident when you approach. Dispatch may not even tell you. You may be sent to a wreck on Highway 280 toward Columbus, and then when you get there, then the truck's turned over, and all of a sudden you see this haze or smoke coming out of the back end of this tractor trailer. So you've got to recognize that, and you've got to decide whether you want to go in to that scene, or you want to call somebody else in to establish what it is. So if you think there's a problem, your responsibility is kind of to hold people back. I have come on scene on wrecks, and the truck driver is a quarter mile up the road going like this to me, and he said, "Hey man, I got some bad stuff in the back," you know. And so then all of a sudden we're stopping right there, and we're doing and then I'm pulling my ambulance across the road with my lights and keeping people from driving down there. So your roles and responsibilities may change. As the first responder there, before police, fire get there, you may be simply doing crowd control and identification and establishing zones. Now, every ambulance in the state of Alabama is supposed to carry a set of binoculars. Fire trucks are supposed to carry a set of binoculars. Whether they are on there or not is something else. A lot of these guys may end up getting sticky fingers and take them to the hunting camp or something like that. But every ambulance is supposed to have binoculars, and that's so you can, from a far vision, you can take those binoculars and look at that scene and see if you can identify what that substance is coming out of the back of that ambulance. Then the other thing that that you're supposed to have is your emergency response book, and those are supposed to be in each ambulance too. You can get other information on scene by The MSDS is a Material Safety and Data Sheet, okay? Anytime, whether it's UPS, Federal Express, Lamar Trucking, whatever, if they're transporting something in the back, he's got a bill of lading stating what it is, and if it is a hazardous material, he has information on that, what it is, and how much it is, and what it can do, how it's packaged and stuff like that. So if you see this truck driver, you're asking him, hey, you got your bill of lading, you got your MSDS, whatever. Now, if you go to a plant, here again, this is what I'm talking about, whether you may be able to get information from the workers there. And anybody that has hazardous material at a plant, unless you win it at night when no one is there, except the night watchman or something, and he doesn't know anything about it. But most likely, you have a team. There's a team there that handles hazardous materials and a response team. Now, in the fire service and in rescue and things of that nature, even like, for example, when we had the BP oil spill, okay, people that worked on the BP oil spill had to take several courses. They had to take at least an 8-hour course. They had to become first responder operations to get a job to work during the BP oil spill. So what this is showing, as an EMT, we're giving you a minimal thing of just a little bit of awareness. It's not even a true awareness class. What I suggest to you is, like I've suggested to other people, is now that you're fixing to graduate, you need to think about what you want to do and how you can get the most experience and advance. I recommend joining volunteer fire departments. Depending on where you live, you can join a volunteer fire department, and you've paid for this education. You've paid for this education, and you're becoming an EMT, and you're going to be surprised. You're going to go to these volunteer fire departments, and all of a sudden, whether it's Beulah or Notasulga or LaGrange, wherever it be, you may walk in there, and there may only be one or two other EMTs. So all of a sudden, you're a brand new guy, but you're an EMT, so you're a little bit higher on the pecking order. What I'm getting at, though, is by being in a volunteer fire department, you get many opportunities to take classes, and they'll give you training, not so much in the medical side, but in these other things, and they will train you in hazardous materials. It's one of the things they'll train you in. So if you decide to do that, you can take operations. You can take a class in first responder operations. It's about an 8-hour class. This person can work in the warm zone. We'll talk about that in a minute. And if you get higher levels, technician and specialist, these are the guys that go into the hot zone. And say there's a 55-gallon drum of hydrochloric acid leaking, and they can't lift it up. Well, these guys, as a technician or a specialist, they may go in there and they may build a dike around it to keep it from coming out of the back of the truck and polluting the stream, or they may go in there with some putty and fill in the hole, or take a little wooden plug and fill in the hole. That's what a technician or a specialist does. But these are all available, and Jesse can tell you that, and the others of you that are in the fire department, they can tell you that you'll get notification about classes and doing this and that, and it's an opportunity for you to advance. Okay, this is a picture. What I did here is to show you a picture. These fellas in the blue, fellas are people, they may be women, they're in the blue suit, and we call those a bubble suit. Yeah, I call them bubble suit. Jesse wants to call them something else. But anyway, have been in the hot zone. They're completely enclosed. Their SCBA is inside. These guys are in their these are in the wash zone. They're in the wash down, which is in the warm zone. These guys are washing them down. Okay, so you see the difference. The difference in equipment, so to speak. These guys are on a breathing. They're on SCBAs. These fellas, they just probably have an MSA mask on. I don't see a SCBA. And the reason, see, that everything has to be inside because this suit is going to be thrown away after they're decontaminated, washed down. This suit is going to be thrown away. That SCBA, that breathing apparatus, is probably $2,500 total. So, you know, they don't throw that away. It's inside that suit with him.
They can send them off to get decon and they can reuse them.
Okay. All right. So, any questions on that so far? All right. Let's talk about this because this is going to be your Bible. Now, Lynn was saying that she's got it she has an app in your phone.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Lyndall.
After this last one, they're not producing those as a hard copy anymore. They're all going to be available only digital.
Okay, so we have some true antiques. To show you how old I am. Well, this is not. I probably had some back in the 1900s, but this was 2004. This was mine. What I used to do when they come out every 2 years, a new one. It's not like American Heart. They make change. Well, they come out one of these every 2 years. Well, this then when I was working in the fire department, they throw the old ones away, and I said, oh, don't throw it away. I'll keep that. But this was 2004, and the one I put on y'all's desk is 2012. All right, I want to kind of give you a quick little guide on what this is, this book. Let's talk about, let's see. So, anyway, what this is going to do is it's going to be your Bible. It's going to tell you everything you're going to need to know. Let's see what it's on the next one. All right. So, it's divided. If you'll look, everybody open up to page 16. Oh, I better go to the new book. Okay, page 6. Page 6 in the new book. All right, these are what we call placards. All right, so when you're riding up down the interstate, when you're headed to Gulf Shores for the weekend or whatever, just start noticing all these trucks, especially or if you're just going to Columbus to go to Ezell's to eat. Who cares? Anyway, start noticing these trucks and looking for placards, especially if you see a tanker truck, which is like on page 8. You start seeing these tanker trucks, you know, you think, oh, well, they're just carrying milk or they're carrying water or something. Look at that. And just start and write down what that placard is. It'll have a number, all right? And what this is on these pages, on page 6, these are categories. These are different categories for these placards. And then I'll show you in a second, we'll show you your ID number. But each of these materials is categorized by what it is. Is it an explosive? Is it a flammable? Is it a toxic gas? Is it a oxidizer? Or whatever. Is it radioactive? Is it poisonous? So each of these placards will have a style, and then they will have the number on that. So you just be surprised what you may see and write down. All right. So open it to the yellow page. Huh? Yeah. All right. So, all right. The first thing we're going to do, let's say you pull up on scene and there's a wreck. there's a wreck. And all you see is number 1717. All right? You see 1717. So go to your yellow pages. Yellow pages. Yellow pages. And look for, in the far left-hand column, look for 1717. Acetyl chloride. Does everybody find it? It's on page 36. You see it? Everybody got it? All right. So you've identified, so you've come on scene and you have 1717, and now all of a sudden you know you've got acetyl chloride. Boom. Right there. All right. Now, what's that number to the right? 155. Now, go to the blue pages. Well, excuse me. The blue pages are alphabetical. If you don't know, let's say you pull up and the truck driver gives you that bill of lading, and then he says he has acetylchlorine. Let's go to the blue pages and look up acetylchlorine, because you know how to spell it. A-C-E-T-Y. Start looking in the A's. Acetylchlorine. Are you on page 91, guys? It was actually the first blue page. Acetyl chloride. It's in green. You see it? So the blue pages are if you know the name. You don't know the 1717, but it still, it brings you back to the it tells you acetylchlorine, its ID number is 1717, but then the guide number, the important guide number, is go to the orange pages, and we'll go to guide 155. Your top right hand corner, look for guide 155. Everybody with me? Yeah. I'll let you catch up. So we're on the orange pages. This is important. This tells you the technical makeup and responsibilities that are going to be required for this acetyl chloride. Potential hazards, public safety, emergency response, spill and leak, and first aid. So it gives you all these categories. So when you're sitting there in the truck, you hadn't gone down there to that van yet. You're sitting there in the truck with the windows up, and what we used to say is uphill, upwind, and upstream. You don't want any of that stuff coming to you, okay? Blue page. Boom. I'll go to that. And then substance guide. Boom. All right, guide 155. I'm going to open it. This is what will be on your phone. I think, Lynn, is that similar? Yeah. Yeah. What I'm showing you on the screen is what she's showing on this is what you can pull up. You can get this app. If while you're sitting around watching Chicago Fire tonight or whenever, and you can say, "Hey, I want to do that. I'm gonna put this app in my phone and be a real fireman." Okay, so here's the important things. What you're trying to do as the first responder there is keep from becoming a victim, or keep other people from becoming a victim. So what is the first thing you might want to do is stay at least 50 meters or 150 feet away, okay, in all directions. What does it say there? Wear positive pressure self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA. So it doesn't want you to even go in there. It's chloride, all right? It doesn't even want you to go in there and breathe in it, because you breathe that and you are damaging your lungs forever. Anyway, that goes through the whole thing. All right, now let's go to the green pages. I want you to go to 1717 in the green pages.
Page 298.
All right, green pages, 1717. And according to Jesse, because he's a paid firefighter, 298. Everybody up? All right. Now, this is what's important and it's interesting. All right. This is your initial isolation and protective action distances. When you're setting up that perimeter, when you're setting up that safety zone to keep people from you and other people from entering, this is what you need to do. All right, if it's a small spill, you need to isolate 30 meters and you need to protect downwind 1/10 of a mile. Now, this is what I find interesting, and you tell me why, besides Jesse. All right, so large spills, let's say large spills. Okay, isolate 100 meters. All right, look in the day, now look to the right. In the day, it says 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer, that's what you're protecting, or 0.6 of a mile. And why at night is it 1.7? So you're isolating. If that wreck is at night, you need to set a perimeter of 1.7 a mile, besides Lynn or Jesse.
It's harder to see.
What?
It's harder to see in your reaction times. You can't see them.
Not so much that. Keeping up. I mean, it could be. Go ahead. Anybody else got guesses besides these two? That's a good answer. But what I'm trying to teach you is why it tells you that. All right, think about this. All right. What happens is in the daytime, you've got several factors. All right. First of all, you've got the sunlight. You've got the sunlight, and many times the sunlight will burn this stuff off. Secondly, during the daytime, daylight hours, you normally have more wind. You have more of a wind situation. So it will dissipate it. It will dissipate it through the wind. Thirdly, at night, what seems to happen besides it becomes still? You know, people talk about the still of the night. When you wake up in the morning, some mornings, what is there? There's fog. There's fog on the ground. So what happens at night is because there's no sunlight, minimal wind, and you've got the dew level coming down, and it pushes this substance down low to the ground. Okay, so it's more of a hazard at night. Okay, you don't have those kind of things in the daytime. It just dissipates easier. At night, hazardous materials are not any more dangerous. They just don't dissipate, and you need to protect yourself and the civilians more. Now, the last thing to do, as you've done through this, and you've gone through this, and you've checked everything out, then you get on the 800 number, and this is where I've had issues before. My feeling is I want to talk to the person. I don't want my dispatcher to talk to the person. I want to call poison control. I want to call Chemtrack. I want to call Chemtel. I want to call whoever it is. I want to have the conversation with them. I don't want to say, will you call Chemtrack for me, dispatch? And then they're giving you back information that is irrelevant or it's got misinterpreted. By you calling them, you can tell them exactly what you've got, and these are monitored 24 hours a day, and they'll be able to answer you. All right? So that's a brief thing on the book. Any questions on the book? The book is a Bible that helps you identify the material and helps you set up zones. All right, now let's go back to this, what we were talking about, the different zones when we have an incident. All right, like the guys that were in the bubble suit. All right. The hot zone is where we're inside that inner perimeter where those guys are being contaminated. When they come out, then we have an area where we warm down and we wash down, whether it's the patients or the workers. We wash them down and clean them, and then you will be in the cold zone. You will be setting up triage and transport in the cold zone. So these people will bring them out to you. If you go into that warm zone, then all of a sudden you're contaminated and you're no longer a helper, you are now a victim. So whoever sets these zones up, usually there'll be cones and they are taped, and there'll only be one way in and one way out. And just you stay in your zone. Don't go in that warm zone unless you have the proper equipment on. Here we go, the rehabilitation and operations is located in the cold zone. When you select this, it'll be a wide area, but it's up to you. You're operating there. You're the first unit. Select a place under a tree or under a shed or something, because you're going to be working there. So it may be raining. It may be 98 degrees. Pick a good spot that it's comfortable and also easy to get the trucks in and out. Again, in the warm zone, we're going to be decontaminating them. We're going to be washing them down. Many times they'll use a baby wading pool, and they'll spray them with water, and they got brushes, and they'll clean them off with soap and such like that. Also, what will happen is your victims, they will disrobe them, and they will be nude. And then when they come out, you'll have like these paper suits or something that they can put on. But their clothing is contaminated. Remember, all right, let's talk about this real quick. All right, so this is how you mechanism of decontamination. Emulsification, that's soap and detergent. Chemical reaction, it neutralizes. So what I'm telling you, depending on what it is, how this person has been where they've been contaminated, is how you, through this book, you understand how to clean them. Simply putting water on some materials will make it more hazardous and burn the patient more, and so you may need to neutralize it with a powder or something of that nature. We may have to disinfect. We may need to dilute it. We need to absorb it with a sponge. We may even use a vacuum, just a vacuum, and suck it off. And then we have to dispose of it. Here they are. They're cutting his clothes. Victims wearing PPE, victims not wearing PPE. So if they're wearing PPE, they're coming through the wash. Here are these guys. This is in the warm zone, because you see his SCBA, his breathing, it's outside his Tyvek suit, and he's not in a bubble. Okay, all right. So anything on hazmat? Questions on hazmat? I'll need all the books back. We'll get them I can get them at the end. I just don't want them walking out. Jesse collects them and takes them to work, I think. You need one? I know. That's what I'm saying. You'll probably, that's why I'm going to count them. All right. The next portion of this chapter is MCI. This is something that you may see more often than the hazardous material. And so what is it, what do you feel like an MCI is?
Bad.
What?
Bad.
Bad? What would constitute an MCI?
Big car wreck, mass shooting, explosion.
Yeah, those would be things that would have an MCI.
Oh, what would constitute?
Constituted would be anything that taxes your ability. So, an MCI can be, how many patients can you treat? 1, 2, 3, maybe. One time I ran a wreck on I-10, and I was the first unit out there, and I got dispatched for wreck on I-10, and it's one of those nights where they were burning, and the fog was down, and the visibility was about 1/10 of a mile. And we're going real slow down the interstate, looking for a turn through. This was going toward Florida, and I'm hearing boom, 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 one right after another. And I said, I got on the radio. I hadn't even gotten the scene, and I said, you better send me every ambulance and every policeman and every fireman that you got, because we got a problem out here. And I got on scene, and luckily, nobody was real seriously injured. When I left, I was the first unit that pulled out. I had 7 patients in my truck, 7 patients. I had 3 on the backboards. I had them in the jump seat. I had them up front. I had them everywhere. But I knew that I had to get them out of there, and they were actually from 2 different cars, but they were all family members, and they all wanted to go to the same hospital. So I just loaded them all up in my ambulance. I didn't give them any vitals or anything, but anyway, I couldn't really provide a whole lot of care, but I was getting them off scene. But an MCI is anything that taxes your ability and your services ability to deal with it. And then you have to start calling in other services or more units to provide the proper care. Most municipalities practice and have MCIs once or twice a year. If you listen on the radio, if you're in a fire department or at EMS, you'll hear Auburn University will be having a big one, and they'll bring in fire departments, police departments, FBI, and they'll run a mock drill, a disaster drill, like a bomb went off at the football game or something, and they'll practice all day. And then the hospitals, you'll go through the whole scenario where you have mock patients. We'll load them, or then we'll call the hospital and say I'm en route and da-da-da-da. In Mobile, it used to work pretty good because we had 4 or 5 hospitals. And what happens is, here, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a problem because you really only have the one hospital. So if you get that MCI, you get that big incident, you're going to tax this hospital. They're not going to be able to take all these patients. So people are going to be loading, and you're going to be going to Columbus. You're going to be flying people to Birmingham. You're going to be flying people to Atlanta and to Montgomery. They're going to be bringing in helicopters and stuff. So you may not even go. You may load your patient, go to the parking lot at the hospital, and wait for helicopters to be coming in, because they start getting more than 8 or 10 patients down there. You're gonna have they ain't gonna be able to handle it. So you'll be part of that, but it's not your decision. When you call in the incident, that NIMS that you did online, okay, that's all part of the incident management system, okay, and it teaches you. It's not, as an employee, as a EMT paramedic, it's beyond your scope. You load your patient. You do what your section leader tells you to do, and then it's above you. They decide, okay? But the biggest thing is is we practice, and most people are very prepared. Most communities are very prepared for this. All right, I'll show you this one. All right. Does anybody got an idea what this is?
Let me turn the light
That's a big crowd, guys. Arlington County Fire Department. There's 1 million people from here all the way back to the Washington Monument. This was last year at the inauguration. I had the privilege of being the paramedic at the, I was on the stage for the presidential inauguration. I was selected to go there, and we, there we are. Can anybody spot me?
Yeah.
There I am. Anyway, I'm on a national disaster medical team, and it's comprised of doctors, nurses, paramedics, and we were sent there, and my section right there was, we had the stage. We had the stage, and I'll go back. Right here where this picture was taken from, that we had 2 trailers. And the trailers were set up just like an ER. We had 8 beds in there. And then, so all the patients that were in, this was what they called front lawn, the front lawn. These people were preferred spectators, but they weren't the VIPs. The VIPs were more toward the left, and they had assigned seating. There were governors, House of Representatives, senators, and their wives, and people like that, ambassadors. These people were preferred. Then the other 700,000 or 800,000 were further down they call it the mall, the reflecting pools and such. We had an ambulance there, and then we had a fire truck, and then we had that little golf cart. But this group of people is, like I said, doctors, nurses, and paramedics. Most of them, quite a few of them were from Texas. I went with a Texas team, but there was this fella here, this girl there, and that guy there. There was 3 of us that were from Alabama, and the rest were from Texas, Nevada, and California. But this is what we did. This is our ER, or our staging area, and we had 2 trailers like this. And this is what you call a billy goat. This is what the military uses. And see how we have our stretcher on there? This is Brad Cox, and he's from Mobile with me, and she's from Mobile with me. And this girl was from California. She was a doctor, and she was a nurse. And what we called it a strike team. And there was 2 strike teams. They were one strike team, and my group was the other strike team. And what we did is we got your airway bag, your monitor, and your airway bag, monitor, and your trauma thing. Anyway, there's so many people out there. Then we had out in the crowd, we had spotters, and they had a radio, and then they had a flag, like a big 8 or 10 foot bicycle, little pennant on a bicycle whip thing, and they would find somebody in medical need out in the crowd, and they'd call in, and then they'd wave this flag. Then our job we would walk this stretcher down as close as we could, and then we would wade through the crowd, carry the patient out on this stretcher, and wheel him back to the ER. And by the time we got back there, we had more patients. I think I had about 10 or 12 patients that day. But as soon as the inauguration was over, my job was pretty much done. We were there just in case the big bomb went off. Because the crowds, once the inauguration, the speech was over, then everybody went out to the parade route and watched the parade. But that's when the fun was, and that's when we took pictures, and I stood right where Obama stood on the platform, and you know, I was really surprised that the FBI and the Secret Service let us do it. I mean, but we were in there. We had to go that morning. That morning we loaded the bus at 2:30 in the morning. Then we were staying in Baltimore, and we went in and we parked, and we had to walk about a mile to one security area. All our credentials were checked there, and then they broke us down into the teams we were going to be, and then we were assigned one Secret Service FBI guy, and they took each one, and they were with us the whole time, and then we had to go through about 4 more sections of security. But then once the speech is gone and all the dignitaries are gone, we were just walking around, and we were going any place we wanted at the Capitol. All right, so that was my experience. Now, this is another MC. Now, the point being on my deal was we were there just in case, okay? We've become smart now, and we know that incidents happen. Actually, Boston happened after this the inauguration, but Boston is an example of EMS and first response at its greatest hour. It was a tragedy. It was a tragedy, but because of all this training that we talked about and all these different people knowing what to do, and you've got thousands and thousands of runners, you've got thousands of spectators, then all of a sudden we have 2 bomb explosions. And what happens? Everybody was prepared. They knew what to do. And sure, there are a lot of people that lost legs and arms, mainly legs, but they would have lost their lives if we weren't prepared. And we had a system, and luckily they blew those bombs up toward the finish line, and all the medical tents were there, all the ambulances were already staged, and they were set to go. And so instead of running or working on participants, they started working on victims. But I think that in history you'll go back, and I like I say, I think that's EMSs and first responders like golden moment, really, because anything and everything that you saw and heard about, all you could say was it couldn't have gone any better. When these incidents happen, just like the NIMS we were talking about, now we go into the incident and command system. What this evolved from about probably 30, 40 years ago from California, when they started having all these wildfires. And what happens is they were having these fires, and all these different fire departments were coming in to fight the fire. Forest Service, Santa Barbara, Los Angeles County, all these places like that. And then everybody's talking on the radio. Nobody knows who's in charge. And so they developed a system of incident command system so that no matter who you are, where you work, you go under this same system, and you're working in this section. You'll be assigned to transport. You'll be assigned to treatment. There's different sections or sectors in this incident command system, and you will work under that. And you won't even be talking on the radio, because there's going to be 1 million people talking on the radio, but it ain't going to be you. You're going to be getting your verbal thing face to face. All right? You may call the hospital when you go en route, but that's all you'll be staged. You may be ambulance number 10 in line, and they'll just say, "Come on up." And as soon as you come up, they're loading your patient. They say, "You go to Trinity Hospital in Montgomery," or whatever it's called, or you go to East Alabama. Boom, and they'll tell you, and then you just pull away. But you're a transport unit. Now, you may be assigned to triage. You may be assigned to treatment. You could be assigned to any of them. But it's broken down in all different sectors. if you come on a scene that overwhelms your resources, just like what I told you when I was going on scene and I heard all those cars hitting, I didn't even know what I had, but I knew that I had to get on the radio and tell them briefly that I got a problem and you need to send everything that you got. So, being the first person there, I was actually the incident commander, okay? Now, once other people got on scene, I can turn that over to somebody else because my job is going to be, I had patients that I needed to get to hospital. But then you turn over incident command to someone else, usually of a high ranking or like some kind of fire chief or something. Face-to-face conversations are important in MCI. This is a picture of staging. You can see how all these well, these are fire trucks, I think. They're all staged because whatever the incident is, everybody can't be there. You're just ready to move up. You're sitting in the cab of your truck, you're sitting in the cab of your ambulance, and you're ready to move up. So that's staging. Triage is where you're determining where the patient needs to go. Treatment, you're treating patients. The transport area is where they're loading patients into the back of your trucks. And rehabilitation, those are going to be for what we call the green or the walking wounded. So what is triage? When y'all take and work at the hospital or you take patients there, is there a nurse, one specific nurse that's in charge? What is she called? Charge nurse? Right. Triage or charge nurse. Okay. It's the charge nurse is usually, she kind of oversees everything, but then she usually designates one person to do the triage. So when the ambulance comes in or the person comes through the doors, the entrance doors, checks in, then that triage nurse decides, does the patient need to go to the back or does she need to wait out here for 2 hours? So that's the triage person, and you're going to get that. We're going to do that in MCI too. So on your truck, you're going to have a lot of different things, and one of them are going to be these triage tags, and it's in your book, I think, on, who's got it? One of us? 1031? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, look at triage tag. All right, this is actually one, if y'all haven't ever felt or seen one, these are what triage tags are like. They work real good. We use them, besides going to inaugurations, I go to disasters, I go to hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that where we have a lot of patients. And what we would do is when we checked in a patient on we would give them a tag like this, and whoever checked them in would fill it in. And you see how they're really nice. They're pretty good about having all the information. You got a man or you circle that. You do a address, town, then you write a brief description. And on the back, it gives anatomy, anterior, posterior, and you can mark where pain or injury are. Then you've got the time across the top. Then you've got 3 blood pressures, 3 pulses, 3 respirations. But here is the thing that we'll talk about is the categories. Are they green, yellow, red, or black? Okay? And that's how in triage we're going to prioritize every patient. All right? So if it's a red, they're priority 1. If it's a yellow, priority 2. Priority 3 is a walking wounded. All right? And these tags are pretty easy. So say this guy's going to be a red, which we'll talk about. All you do is you break off the yellow and the green. You put this around, you can put it around their neck just like this. Boom. Then you go on to the next patient. And then so 5 minutes later, when 4 or 5 other ambulances pull up, then they've already got all this information on them, and they don't have to waste time asking the same questions. And then they can see, did this patient deteriorate? All of a sudden, he's only breathing 6 times a minute, where when 10 minutes ago he was breathing 18 times a minute. All right? So that's what these priorities are. 1, 2, and 3, red, yellow, and green. We'll talk about them in a second. Priority 4 is dead. Pretty much when you've got multiple patients, if this person isn't breathing and he doesn't have a pulse, then you go on to the next one. You don't have time to start working a code when you've got 8 or 10 other patients. So unfortunately, now, as soon as you get some resources, you may end up going back and trying to work that guy, but you don't have time to work him, and then 2 or 3 other people die because all they needed was you to open their airway and put an OPA in or something, you know. So our goal is to do start triage, which is pretty much a 30-second analysis of the patient. It's a foundation of speed, simplicity, and consistency in applications. We base it on respirations, pulse, and mental status. So what happens is, so you go on scene, and let's say it's a bus overturned, school bus. Or let's don't say school bus because that'd be all children. Let's say it's a commercial bus. It's running between Montgomery and Atlanta, and they got 30 passengers in there. So they're all different ages. So you walk in that and the bus is turned over. You realize there's no hazardous material. You walk in and you can hear all these people moaning and groaning, help me, ho. So the first thing you might do, I would do, is I say, anybody that can get up and walk, I want you to get up and walk out right now. Boom. So out of those 30 patients, you may have 10 that can simply walk, get up and walk. And because of that, you know 3 things. They're breathing, they got a pulse, and their mental status is good enough to know and follow your commands. So as soon as they're passing you, you kind of do a once over on them and say, and you pick a spot. You say, go sit over there by that tree. We'll get to you in a minute. So you've cleared out 10 people. Now you start going row to row and spending 30 seconds on each one of these people that's left in the bus. You want to know what their pulse is. You want to know, their respirations. You want to know what their pulse and what their mental status is. Can you tell me your name? What today is? Such and such. And then you make your evaluation of whether they're green. These won't be green probably. They could be. They didn't get up and walk. They're probably going to be a yellow or red, or unfortunately maybe a black. But that's how we use the start triage system. Are you able to walk? Okay, yes. So automatically they're a priority 3 pretty much. That's what it says. So they're green. They can walk. If they can't, then the next thing we want to do is we want to check respirations. Are they breathing? Yes. Are they greater than 30 per minute? Then all of a sudden they're a red, all right, because they're outside our parameters. Are they less than 30? which is better. So then we check her pulse. What's their pulse? You can get a pulse, no pulse. We present, or if they're not breathing, then all we would do is reposition their airway, and maybe if you had an OPA, you might put it in there. Because sometimes, remember, people can just have a occluded airway, and it's simply a readjustment of the airway, and it opens it up. No respirations, they go to 0. Good black. All right, good pulse, unresponsive, no breathing, no pulse, priority 4 or priority 0, which? Unresponsive, not breathing, no pulse. Which would it be? Huh? Black, 4, 0. 0 is the worst. Breathing, no apparent pulse. 4. That'd be 1. Now you say, how can that be possible? Remember, if their blood pressure is low, if you're checking a radial pulse, they could be breathing, but they just have a real low blood pressure and they're no pulse. All right, good skin. Remember cap refills when we're not getting a blood pressure. Check the fingernails for cap refill. Good mental status, alert. They're priority 2. Altered mental status, they become priority 1. If they start talking to you funny, they can't answer you, there's a good possibility that they have a head injury. So, they're not showing other signs, but because their mental status is poor, then they become a higher priority. Okay, so the next system would be after you've triaged them, then we got to go, when we work on the triaged and treated patients, then we need to transport them. Your ambulances are, like I said, they're usually staged in a designated area, and then you're called up. And like I said, usually somebody will walk over and says, move up, move up. Most of the time, like I said, they already told you when you pull up where you're going and what you got. Now, when you're there and you've been there a while, you're going to have a lot of people milling around, whether they're patients, sometimes they're family members. You may spend some time being a psychiatrist and seeing about people's psychological needs. You need to be caring, you need to be honest and reassuring, but don't psychoanalyze somebody's distress. Whether they keep telling you there's a green elephant in that tree, just find, okay, well tell me this, and this. Sometimes you just got to ignore what people are saying. You just note it, and the most interesting thing to me, and when you're analyzing these patients and you're doing head injuries and trauma, is you'll see it, and I tell you tonight, and it won't sink in, but once you get it, you'll say, man, that's exactly what he's talking about. What'll happen is these people will get a head injury, and they'll say, hey, what happened? And as you're doing this, you go ahead and you tell them, well, you're driving a motorcycle and you got thrown for the motorcycle and da-da-da-da, you got a broken arm, and then we're on the way to the hospital. And about 15 seconds later, he says, hey, where am I? What happened? And after, I might tell him twice what happened, but after the third time, I don't even tell him anymore. But I know what's happened to him. He's got a head injury, or he's really drunk. But usually it's a head injury. But it's almost comical because they'll keep asking you the same question. And it may not even be what happened. He says, hey, what about my bike? Did somebody get my bike? I said, yeah, your buddies were there. Is my bike wrecked? I said, no, your bike's in good shape. Then 15 seconds. Hey, what happened to my bike? And you're going, holy cow.
Yeah, we had a four-wheeler wreck. He asked me, he asked
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I'm telling you, it's almost funny. After they ask you every 15 seconds the same question. Finally, sometimes you just got to be ugly and just say, "Listen, I'm trying to treat you. I can't answer your question," because they can become agitated about it too. I need to know what you did to my bike. And I'm going, okay. All right, so we learned about hazmat. We learned about the hot, warm, and cold zones. We learned, remember this. If you make a mistake and load a contaminated person in your ambulance, and then you pull up to that hospital, you roll in, and then you mention, or the word gets out that they were contaminated, all of a sudden, you've contaminated that whole hospital. We had an incident in Mobile where there was a UPS, at the UPS transfer area where the trucks pull up, they had a spill, some kind of spill. Well, the supervisor took and the fire department responded to a hazmat call. Well, when they got there, there was no patient. They said, "Where'd the patient?" "Oh, well, they took him in POV down to the hospital." By the time we called the hospital, they already showed up down there, and the guy had all contaminated clothes. It was like a white powder or some kind of stuff. I don't know what it was. But anyway, they shut down Mobile Infirmary for about 2 hours. Nobody could leave the ER. Nobody could come to the ER because this one guy, this knucklehead guy, took this guy that was contaminated into the ER. So don't be the knucklehead and take your patient who is contaminated into the ER. For MCIs, you're part of a big team. Know your role and just fill your role of whatever someone tells you. You're low on the pecking scale right now, and you're probably going to end up doing what you think is a menial task, but it's all part of the big picture. Learn how to triage, know where all that stuff is. Remember, hazardous material responses require specialized training. Call Jesse because he's taken the course 14 times and he knows hazmat. Oh, twice? Just twice now? Okay. We'll call Lynn. She's taken it 3 times? No. 1? All right. But anyway, call the pros. Call the pros, all right? All right. Common responsibilities. So your job as an EMT, identify that it is a hazmat incident, do scene control, and activate Jesse and Lynn, okay? Remember, who's the most important person? You. You're the scene. You don't want to become a patient. Remember, there's that definition. A multiple casualty incident overwhelms resources of responding units. Whether it's 1 ambulance or 10 ambulances, if it's more than you got there and are coming, then it's a MCI, and you're going to have to start calling for we call it mutual aid. Auburn might call Opelika. Opelika might call Smith Station and Beauregard or wherever, you know. You're going to... Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens if you're the first one that's been to MCI? Do you waste your time? Well, not waste your time, but do you fill this out for each patient? Like, if you get to someone that needs to be treated right, then do you treat them, or do you continue to go down?
No, in triage, if you've got an MCI and you've got that many patients, remember, you're giving them 30 seconds. All you're doing is finding out, do they have a pulse, do they breathe, and do they have a good mental status? And then you go on to the next one. If you start treating that one person, then the other 29 people on the bus are going to have a problem.
What if it's just like open the airway something real quick and just let them
You can do that, yeah. 30, don't waste any more than 30 seconds to 1 minute. You've got to go on. This is the one time where you have to be You have to look at the big picture. Does it, what I'm saying is, if you help this guy, you dominate this one person, and they will dominate it. Some guy's got a broken leg, and they've never had a broken leg before. They're going to scream like a banshee, and they go, hey, you got to help, you got to. And you've got 29 other people screaming at you for help. And you can't, all you can do is just make sure that there's not something there. This guy doesn't have an impaled object in his chest or something that you can't do something about to save that person while this other guy's screaming because he has a broken leg. You just got to start, triaging them and assessing as many as you can as fast as you can. Then once you've assessed all those people, hopefully another ambulance or two has come, and then you can go back in your mind, I've got to go back and see that guy in that second row. I was really worried about him. Then you go back and start on him. You can start working on him. Once you've assessed those guys and you've made that decision that all you had to do was open his airway and you saved his life. Well, this guy wants you to wrap his arm up because it's bleeding. Just say, hey, I want you to hold, you're going to have to, I ain't got time to do this. I got to see all the other patients. You need to put your own hand on here and hold pressure. You've got to be Mr. Meanie, because a lot of these people a lot of them are babies. I'm telling you. I mean, you see it every day in EMS. You get called to Walmart parking lot, and two people have had a crash at 10 miles an hour, and they're going, oh, my neck hurts, and you realize that a lot of people's pain tolerance is different, and then you just got to assess them, and then, if you've got 2 carloads of people at the Walmart parking lot, you got to decide, well, is this all BS, or do I really have a patient, I wouldn't, at the Walmart parking lot, I wouldn't start using these triage tags. This is for when they're rolled up, when you've got a rollover out here and you've got people with major injuries. You see, Miranda? That's what I'm talking about. The other ones, you can take your time, but even at the Walmart parking lot, don't let one person dominate you. Yeah. Just say, hey, tell me what's wrong with you. And, if I see I see 2 bumpers that are just kissed like that, I just start saying, what's your problem? What's your problem? What's your problem? What's your problem? Then I say, do you want to go to the hospital? Do you want to go to the hospital? Yeah. And then all of a sudden I know I got 6 people that want to go to the hospital, then I call. I'm not even getting blood pressure or stuff. You see what I'm saying? But when these guys, when some of them are unconscious, you've got major trauma, you've got to categorize them real quick as possible. Quick question, just y'all blurt out. The drivers are visible in each vehicle. One appears to be conscious. The other 2 are bent forward or slumped back. There are passenger visibles in 2 vehicles. One or more of them may need extrications. So how should you proceed?
Call you what you do.
On fire, let us do it.
Okay. Make sure that you have the proper assets going. You can reach through there, guys. If you can't get into that truck if you can't get into that truck or that cab, you reach in there, you feel for a pulse, you put a oxygen mask on them. There are many times while, in this deal here, for example, you're waiting, that's unstable or something, and you're waiting on fire department, you can reach through there and provide care to those patients. Remember, again, is your safety. Do you want to climb on that vehicle until it's stabilized? No. So, you can be a hero, but be a smart hero, all right? Any other questions? Did y'all learn anything? Yeah. Was this your favorite class all year? Huh? Unfortunately, I usually teach, but y'all having it Tuesday, and I'm already teaching, so I can't teach it. But I'll miss you.